Okay, let's try this one more time. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our Saturday Anything Goes. Tonight, what I wanted to show you is a technique on how to create some subtle differences in a card just using our Whisper White craft ink. I purchased the craft ink a long time ago. I really haven't used it. I know it's great for stamping on craft cardstock, but I don't really use a lot of craft cardstock. And so it's kind of been sitting there neglected. Well, this past week, a friend shared a picture on her Facebook page, and I'm going to bring it up so you can see it. Is that not gorgeous? And I thought, I want to try and recreate that. And so I thought my Balmy Blue will look good. My Shaded Spruce will look good. I can sponge or use a dauber for the background. But how do I get these misty areas? And that's when the light bulb went off. And I said, you know what? Our craft ink is sticky. So it takes longer to dry, which means you can blend it a bit. You can build up areas, or you could have it very soft. And I just played around, and that is how this card came to be. And so, as you know, I posted on my Facebook page, and everyone was just asking, well, how did you do that? How did you do that? So I thought we would go ahead and spend some time doing that tonight. And just a disclaimer, I have to remember how I did it, so just bear with me. But I think we're going to get a good representation. One other thing we're going to change is the sentiment, because I liked the sentiment that I used for this one, but it really takes up quite a bit of space on this card, and I thought it was a little overbearing. So we're going to use a smaller sentiment panel, which I think will work out well. All right, so let me bring out my pieces. We're not going to use a whole bunch in this one. We've got our card base, which is Balmy Blue, and it's 4 1/4 by 11, scored and folded at 5 1/2. And then my actual design panel here is cut 1/8 of an inch shorter. So that gives me just a tiny, tiny border all the way around. All right, so we can put our card base away for right now, and let's just work on this background. Now I'm just going to bring this in where we can kind of see it. The inks we're going to be using, again, are Shaded Spruce, Balmy Blue, and I use gray granite for the rocks. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take my Balmy Blue, and we'll start laying in our background. And I have some ink on here already. So let's just see. Now for the sky, I went back and forth. I need some ink here. I just went back and forth. And the harder you press, the more ink you're going to get on the paper. And you'll notice I'm also kind of rubbing the ink off before I actually take it to the paper. And this already is starting to create some fun effects, because what you may be able to see is I have some white areas there that will correspond to how we see this. But we will still be using our craft ink on the sky, not just the water. And I went a little bit heavier with it down here towards the middle, because I'm going to start laying in my water next. And I wanted a definite darker part at the top to let you know where the horizon line is. So I've been going back and forth. For my water, though, I'm going to go up and down. And that does a couple of things. Number one, it helps to differentiate between the sky and the water. And number two, it's going to work really well for when we start laying in our rocks and our main tree and all of that. All right, so this is what I have so far. I'm going to put that aside for a minute, and I want to start bringing in some of the craft ink. And rather than take it off the pad, which I was doing with the sponge and just found that it actually worked a lot better if I did a couple of drops onto a block. And this is really thick, if you can see that. It's really thick ink. But that is great because it will, instead of just blending in to the blue and making the blue lighter, it's actually going to sit on top in some areas. So I've got my sponge here, and I'm just going to take this now, and I'm going to do a technique that's called stippling. Stippling simply means you load up your brush, or in this case your sponge, with that white, and then you're just going to dab here and there. And we'll end up putting more ink on, but this is the start. All right. Then what I can do is I can spread that out a little bit just by making little circular motions. And that's what made it look like there were clouds in my sky. If I bring this up, see how wet that is? That helps bring another layer of texture. And my light areas where I didn't have a lot of blue, they really stand out more. And then once that's dry, if you want more blue, you certainly can put in more blue. I am going to go back and put in a little bit more blue down here, just because, as you saw up at the top, once I start laying in the white, we want to have some good tonal values that will be different. And don't worry if you get these little sponge marks, it's not a problem. If you look at water and the reflection in water, you'll see that that happens. I'm going to wait and put the white in my water until I have stamped my images, because if I bring this back, I did this in full strength Shaded Spruce, but or I think it was second generation actually Shaded Spruce, but you can see it's even gotten lighter in areas. And I did that by using a brush with my craft ink. But let's go ahead and bring out our Shaded Spruce. Hello, Jean. Hi, Sandy. Hello, Kathy. Thank you all for joining. All right. I've got my stamps loaded already onto my blocks, and we're going to be mainly using images from Waterfront. So we'll be using this image, and we'll be using this image, and we'll be using this image. And then our main tree is going to come from Rooted in Nature, but I'm going to put that on last. So let me just ink this up. And I'm just going to check something. Yep, I did the stamped off. So what I want to do now is determine where I want my little trees to live. And remember, I've got my horizon line here. So I'm going to put an island kind of going this way, right underneath that blue area. Isn't that pretty? And then I'll do another one. Oh, and look at that. I managed to rock my stamp, but that's okay. We'll make it work. So this one I'm going to put, I want to leave enough space there between the two to allow for reflections. And this didn't stamp completely in the center of that, but you know what? I like it. It all gives dimension and texture to your picture. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in my God, listen to me, my tree stamp, and we're going to start laying in some trees. Here, because this is a pretty tall stamp, I actually am only going to be using part of it. So I'm going to ink it up and then just wipe off where I think I want my trees to start. Because remember, this is supposed to be far away. I'm going to stamp off and then just start. Oops, I've got some ink there and I definitely don't want that to show up. And then I'm just going to start laying in my trees. just like that. I also want trees for this one, and those are going to be even further away, so I'll wipe off even more ink. Just going to have the bare tops of this, I think. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight across because it's going to be misty. So we'll decide where we want these to live. And look at that, I'm still not getting all of that off. So hang on a second there. Okay. And we'll start laying these in. Wait, I got to stamp off first. And let's just start putting them where we want them. So just like that. And I think I'm even going to do a few more. So I'll stamp off. And let me wipe down a little bit. It's these little things, gang, that really make a difference. The smaller my trees get, the further away they appear. Just like that. All right, so we've got that done. My next thing that I wanted to work on was doing images, reflections, if you will, in the water. So for that, I've got to turn this around. And here I'm just going to do barely the tips. Stamp it off, and I'm actually going to stamp it off twice. And then where my trees are, that's going to create my reflection in the water. And it doesn't really look like water just yet, but it will. That's where our white is really going to come into play. So I'll stamp this off twice and start filling in right here. And then one more time, stamped off twice, right there. All right, so there we now have our trees and our reflection in the water. Hello, Jeanette. Okay, so those were the main images from the picture I needed to put in. Here is where I started with my challenge. How in the devil am I going to make this look misty? I'm going to take a little bit more of my craft ink here. And remember, we haven't done any stippling or added any white at all to the bottom, to the water portion. For the water itself, it's fine to use a sponge. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in different areas. And I am going to hit my trees there. I want to leave some of that showing. Okay, and then I can start stippling the water. And I'm going to be pretty generous with it there. And then what you can do, like we did up at the top for the sky, just do little circular motions to help that ink absorb into the paper. You don't want just a big glob. Okay, now here's where I had some fun. So it doesn't really look much like mist. Let me lift off a little bit of that ink there. But watch what happens when I put it, and I just have a cheap dollar store brush. And it's flat. It's a flat brush. So it's flat on both sides, and it has a nice little chiseled area for the tip. And that's going to be important. Any of you that have done oil or acrylic painting know what I'm about to do. We're going to add highlights. So wherever we want some highlights, in this case, I did it kind of towards the bottom. I'm laying it down and I'm pushing, just pushing that ink. And as I do it, it's going to lay in my highlights. So it's not lifting my shaded spruce, which is nice. And I'm just softening the bottom of those. And that to me indicates where the mist is coming up off of the water and covering the bottom part of the land. So I'll do the same thing over here. I'm just gonna touch and push. So I'm touching the very bottom of where I stamped, and I'm just pushing it up. All right. Now, if that looks too like this, we have a nice smooth edge. This still kind of looks choppy. Just pull that down. Going on top, and I'm just pulling that ink straight down. All right. We can also do that in different areas here. So I've picked up a little bit of the Shaded Spruce, which is fine. I'm just laying it down. And if you want even more of a misty effect, all you have to do is go in, load the brush up again, and hit it some more. But I'm thinking for the moment, I'm liking that. And it's going to be wet for a little bit. I may end up bringing in my heat tool just to help set it. And that's because, again, our craft ink is very sticky. So it sits on top rather than soaking into the paper. So let me just bring in my heat tool here. And we'll just speed up the drying a little bit. Okay. So sorry if it gets a little loud. I'll try to do it kind of down here. And if you're going to use your heat tool, you want to use it on the lowest setting. Move it back and forth. And because you have it on the low setting, it really shouldn't curl your paper very much. I just want to go in and dry some of these areas. And the reason for that is when we lay in our major tree, I want it to be crisp because that's in the foreground. The misty stuff is in the background. And as I dry this, you're going to see that some of it lightens up even further. I've got a little blob of ink here, so I'm just going to soak that up with my brush. Otherwise, that will never dry. Hey, Patricia. And I will tell y'all, it's just ink and paper, right? So if you start doing it and you don't like the effect, pull out another sheet of paper and just keep going. It helps though, like I said, that picture really helped me a lot for doing this initial part, for being able to put perspective in the picture by making sure some of my trees back here were a lot smaller. All right, we still have a couple wet areas, but I think we're good to go with that. So I'll leave my heat tool out there just in case we need it. All right. And I thought to myself, you know, this is really pretty. And I could have just put a sentiment on it and called it done. But back when I was in my 20s, on Saturday afternoon on PBS, used to be Bob Ross's Joy of Painting. And I loved watching it. I even took up oil painting for a short period after watching him because he made techniques look so easy. And I looked at this and I thought, you know, if I was watching the Bob Ross program, he'd say, we need a happy little tree. And that's going to push our landscape even further into the background. So I went ahead and picked up this tree from Rooted in Nature, and I stamped this full strength in Shaded Spruce. So we've been doing second generation stamping and even third generation stamping with the Shaded Spruce. But for this one, I want it to be full on. The other thing is, if you look at this one, I did want the tree to go up above my trees in the background because this is supposed to be taller. It's in the foreground. And I have it coming off of the edge of the page. And that just makes it look more natural. And anybody who's watched Bob Ross will tell you, yep, that's the way he did it. So we're just going to decide where we want this. And boom. There we go. And because it is done full strength, it succeeds in pushing that even further into the background. All right. Now that looks good, but we kind of have this tree hanging out in the middle of nowhere, floating in the air. So what can we do to anchor it? Well, as my friend Bob Ross would say, you gotta put in some happy little rocks to go with it. So how to create rocks? I played around and found out that our mountain from Waterfront makes some pretty darn good rocks. So for that, we're going to use our gray granite. And we're not done with our white yet, so I have a couple more things to show you. But I'm going to ink this up, and I'm going to use it full strength. Now, obviously, we don't want a mountain down here. All I did was I started building in my rocks. So that worked out pretty good, right? And we'll do another one right here. And you don't have to go crazy with them, but wherever you think a rock needs to live is where I would put it. All right, so I kind of like that right there. And some of that gray granite is sitting on top of the white, so it's already providing some shadows there or highlights, but we're going to do even more. So back comes my block with my white. I'm going to pick up just a little bit on the edges, and we're going to highlight our rocks. To do that, I'm going to the top portion here, so I'm going to hit it and push. And I don't know if it shows up very well, but that's putting highlights on my rocks. So go to the edge, push it to get those highlights. The Whisper White Craft ink is going to lighten up the gray granite, so it won't really look white when we're done. Just wherever you think you want some highlights, just push them in there. These rocks are pretty craggy, so just wherever you want. And if it's too white for you, keep in mind it is going to tone down, but you can always just pull some back. All right, now let me clean off my brush and get that off, because you'll notice I've got these little green lines going here. Let's see what I can do with my white ink, if I can mask any of that. I may not be able to completely, but I can come back in with my blue and go over that area again. All right, we're almost done with the white. I did my highlights on my rocks. Well, we have to do it on our branches as well. So if you look at this one, you'll notice the lighter tonal quality just on the edges. So we're going to say the light's coming from this direction, and just hit the tips of our evergreen. Pick up a little more ink here and just go in. And you can even do it on the bark itself of the tree. Just go in and hit the one side. All right, that's pretty good. So that is how I went in and created my misty morning. And again, like I said, I can come back with more of this, and if I want more mist over here, I can put more mist. Just keep hitting the bottom edges and it will provide that. But I'm pretty happy with that, I think. So let me bring out my heat tool one more time. Oh, Sandy, I know. I just absolutely loved watching him. Girlfriends would want to go to the mall on Saturday afternoon. No, I got to watch my friend Bob Ross. All right, so let's just hit this, because I used quite a bit of white down here. just kind of go around in circles. And as you can see, if you look at this back one, that's getting really light now. All right, I'm not going to get it completely dry because really it's so sticky. It does take a little bit to dry. So when I did the original one, at this point, I think I got up and made lunch for hubby and then came back after we'd had lunch. But that looks pretty good, right? Now I'm going to be brave and I'm going to try and mount this without smearing or smudging anything. And let me tell you how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to turn this over and put it on the back. I know that I just have a very thin border here. Get it going the right way. So I'm actually, well, come on. Nope. Oh, there it is. Okay, that's the bottom. I am going to put glue on my card base. And that should hold it just fine. And then very carefully, try not to smudge anything. You will definitely want to let it dry though. Don't be impatient like me. See what I mean? Actually, I can use this. All right. Our top is completely dry, so it doesn't really take all that long, but we just finished working on the bottom. All right. Now, as I mentioned, I love this saying, but I really felt like the sentiment panel took up way too much space. I really want your eyes to focus on the landscape. So I have a different sentiment for us to use, and this comes from the stamp set, Here's a Card. This will be a sympathy card. Words cannot express the deep sorrow felt on your behalf. I used a stitch square. It's the second largest one, I think, the second one from the smallest. The one after the smallest, there, that does it. And then I simply cut a mat of Balmy Blue to give, again, a thin border around it. And I think I'm going to like this more. I will prop it up using dimensionals. Oops, one more, Linda. So let me just lay these on here. And you will get inky. If you look at my hand, you will get inky with because of that craft ink, but it is so worth it. All right, I'm going to try and get this on there without touching too much. So I just want it up here in the corner, so I'll lay it down gently, pick it up. Yep, that looks good. And voila. So there we have the finished card. I just really loved being able to use that craft ink for something other than stamping on craft cardstock. And I love the way that it mutes that shaded spruce to push it even further into the background. All right, anybody have any questions about how that was done? Hi, Janelle. I'm glad you liked it, Jean. All right, so you guys are all going to get out your craft, your white ink, and practice doing a landscape scene, right? Right. Okay, well, that is what I wanted to show you. If you think of any questions after the Facebook Live is ended, just drop me a comment and I will be happy to get back with you. And I'd love to see some of your creations. If you can message me with a picture, I'll put it up on my Facebook page so everyone can enjoy them. All right, well, I hope you have a blessed day tomorrow and a wonderful week ahead. See you next Saturday. Bye-bye now.